Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to Buford TDFS. These are my DraftKings Week 7 cash and GPP picks for the NFL. So a bit of an introduction for this channel. You may be asking, why am I starting this at Week 7 in the NFL season? Well, I've been meaning to do this for a while, so why not start now than later? Basically, what I'm doing this channel for is not only help others with their pick process or helping getting them a few locks for the week, but also to help my research process. By making these videos, it makes me dig a bit more deep into what I'm choosing, and hopefully that will make me a better player as well. So let's just get right into it then. So for the Week 6 recap, overall, besides my phone battery being very low, as you can see here, I did decently well, decently positive this week. My GPPs didn't do super great, but I don't really expect them to. I usually get about 2 to 3 big GPP wins a year. So this is more or less along the lines of what I expected. Then my cash games at the bottom, you can see both cash pretty well. I've been running pretty hot in cash, so we'll see if that continues. And then at the bottom, too, you can see that I had a 20-entry train lineup. So I put in 20 entries of the same lineup, and that also worked out pretty well. So let's get into our first pick of the week, a good quarterback for cash game. And that is Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. So he's playing Cincinnati this week. The over-under is 46.5. So he's a great pick for cash just because he has a fantastic floor. He's getting about 65 rush yards a game. He's in a great matchup against Cincinnati, I'd say. Cincinnati has been middle of the pack so far, stats-wise. But I think with such a high-powered offense and Lamar Jackson, who's playing like an MVP again, I'd say this is a great spot for him. He'll be very highly owned, so just to make note of that, for cash games, that's fine. I have no issue with that. It could also work in GPPs as well. For GPPs, though, I would say try to pair him up with a receiver such as Marquise Brown or Mark Andrews, or even both. So another quarterback that we can look at who's going to be a bit more lower owned than Lamar, but equal price and also have a pretty good upside as well, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. So he's playing Washington this week with an over-under of 49. So the Washington defense has been completely terrible. Almost worse than the league, I would say, fantasy-wise. So he's in a great matchup. He'll be a bit more lower-owned than Lamar. Lamar could get up to 20%. Aaron Rodgers could get down to maybe 5 to 10, somewhere around there. His ceiling is also extremely high. You know, those 4 touchdown games to Devontae Adams always bode well for fantasy owners. But also, with Devontae in mind, we also have to think of if Devontae will be highly owned this week, which he will, Aaron Rodgers' ownership might also go up because of that. So just keep that in mind. So going into running back now, our next cash game pick of the week is going to be Darrell Henderson of the LA Rams. So Darrell Henderson he's playing Detroit this week, and the over-under is higher than I thought it'd be. He's in a very positive game script. I just think the Rams are going to completely dominate this game. The Lions are ranked last against RBs fantasy point-wise. He's still way too cheap at $6,600. I'd give him about a $7,300 price tag this week, so he's a great value. But because of that, he'll be very highly owned, 20 to 30%, I'd say. And he's also going to be very chalky because of that. But I'd say he's my lock of this week for cash. GPPs, you can also use him in, but because of that ownership, I would say maybe look somewhere else or just keep his exposure maybe a little bit lower or even higher, kind of depending on the field and how you think they're going to go. So a good pivot this week, I would say, is going to be Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals. So going back to that Baltimore and Cincy game of an over-under of 46.5, the over-under isn't great, but if it is more of like a running slugfest, I'd say, he could be still a very good pick. He has a similar projection to Henderson. The projections that I use have him about 1 to 1.5 points lower than Henderson. So still a good pick, still about the same price. He's still a bell cow in my eyes. You know, you have P. Ryan and Evans in there a little bit, but I think it's going to be just fine. He's very affordable, like I said, and he'll have a much lower ownership due to the other circumstances that I mentioned with that low over-under as well. So I'm going to throw in Joe Mixon a bit in my GPPs and just see if that pans out. And yeah, so cash game, not as good, but GPPs, I think he's fine. So getting to the wide receivers, and as I mentioned before, Devontae Adams. So they're playing Washington, as I mentioned before. He's had a huge amount of targets per game at 11. He's in a great matchup. He's actually cheaper this week than last week, which makes no sense to me. So I might hit that lock button on him. He's gonna have very high ownership, so in cash games, that's good, almost great in my mind. And then GPPs, just try to mix it up as well. So Devontae Adams, great cash game pick this week. Then to kind of pivot off Adams a little bit with another high volume receiver who's elite, I would say we can go with DeAndre Hopkins of the Cardinals. So he's playing Houston this week, and Houston, as we know, is terrible. I was going to say something else, but that's not very appropriate for YouTube. So he has less targets than Devontae. He's getting about 6 a week, which isn't great, but he's in a fantastic matchup. He'll be much more lower owned, and he still has that huge elite wide receiver upside. If the Cardinals do blow out those Texans, there's an argument of they might run the ball more, but also usually when a team blows another team out, they're going to beat them through the run and through the air. So I think Hopkins is a great mix-in for GPPs this week. So at tight end this week, let's go to Ricky Seals-Jones of Washington. So going back to that Green Bay game, they're going to be underdogs. I mean, he's hit value every week, and I've plugged him in a lot over the past few weeks. He just keeps hitting. He's in a great game script, come from behind. He's still way too cheap for the volume he's getting. And because of that, he'll have high ownership. But as I mentioned before, if you're playing cash, high ownership is fine. High ownership in my mind is actually great because if you want to, let people make their own mistakes and you just go with the value plays, that usually pans out much more often than it doesn't. So Ricky Seals-Jones, cash game pick this week, good in my mind. So the GPP tight end option, I'm going to say, honestly, just stack any tight end with their quarterback that you're going to be using in GPPs, which is why I do not have a GPP tight end this week. You could use Seals-Jones and GPPs, which is fine. I have no issue with that. But tight ends are so high variance that besides Seals-Jones at cash or a couple other high dollar tight ends at cash, I'd say just stacking the tight end with your quarterback is the best way to get that upside in GPPs. So for the defense this week, I'm going to go back to the Arizona Cardinals defense. They're at 3,100 against Houston after destroying the Browns last week, more or less. I mean, to be fair, Baker was hurt. Their offense was a little bit less firepower, but this defense is looking good. They're getting pressure, they're getting turnovers, and it's too cheap in my mind. And come on, it's like Houston. Like, Davis Mills is not a world beater. It's kind of just there. I mean, no slant. I don't want to slander any Stanford fans or Houston fans, but, I'm going to benefit from it by playing this defense. So, very high ownership this week. I could see up to 35%, but cash games, I really don't care. GPPs, I might get a little different. And GPPs, honestly, just play any defense that works for you. That's usually a very good strategy. So lastly is my dart throw of the week, and that's going to be Tyler Johnson of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So they're playing Chicago, whose defense hasn't been as great this year as people had thought or had hoped. They're getting a lot of sacks, though, which is nice. They could be a good GPP play, actually, that Chicago defense. Anyways, so Antonio Brown got hurt, and he's out. Gronk is out. Brady likes to spread that ball around his receivers. Tyler Johnson is going to get snaps. He will probably get targets and receptions. He's at min price, and he has seen targets in the past as well. So Tom Brady, he has targeted him. He has thrown touchdowns to him. He's going to be very low owned now. So I'm not, for the time being, GPP-wise, I love this guy. His ownership might rise over the week, so keep note of that. But yeah, those are my initial picks this week. Thanks for watching. Tune in for next week and like and subscribe if you liked it. Like it if you like it. Dislike it if you dislike it. Anyways, have a good week, and I hope you all do well, and we will check back in next week. This is B4T DFS signing out.